Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where we do spend quite a bit of time talking about comic book movies. And how can we not? There are so many coming down the pipeline. And also, there is intense interest in each and every one of them. Well, almost each and every one of them. I think understandably we can't focus on all of the comic book movies. There are just becoming too many of them. But Marvel, overall, has done a pretty good job of standing out from the crowd, I think because their slate is so hotly anticipated. However, there are unfortunately a few anomalies for the studio. One is Ant-Man, which opens in just a few weeks, which is, I think, really overall stayed off people's radars, unfortunately. We'll see what happens when it actually hits theaters and what the box office results are of such a lack of interest. But another one I think that you could probably put in the same camp is Doctor Strange. Not a lot of attention for Doctor Strange. In fact, when I recently covered it, I accidentally put it down as 2017 instead of 2016 in the metadata because it just seems like it's further out than it is. But in fact, it does come out next year, and it's one of Marvel's only two films for 2016 alongside Captain America Civil War. But we spend much more of our time talking about Black Panther and Captain Marvel even than we do Doctor Strange, which is very close to coming out. It hasn't started shooting yet, and perhaps when it does go into production, that will help it a little bit in terms of online attention. It did trend on Twitter just a few days ago when it was rumored that Tilda Swinton might be cast as the Ancient One. We didn't get an official confirmation for that, but I think it was encouraging that she did trend on Twitter when that casting rumor broke. But I think that Marvel is hoping to maybe get even more attention for Doctor Strange with a toy set that they're going to be releasing at Comic-Con this year, and that's our first story of the day. Although, interestingly, this announcement was made on Friday, and very few people picked up the story, across the internets. When these comic book stories break, one of the reasons they trend on Twitter is that almost every website picks it up, and so therefore it trends just from, not from people talking about it, but just from the media coverage. But really no attention for this toy set, which is a shame because it looks pretty awesome. Now, one of the great things about Comic-Con are the toy sets. Both Mattel and Hasbro go out of their way to release some really fun sets, often, aimed at not kids, and there are very long lines at the booths for these toy companies, so people can pick up these exclusives. And so Hasbro does have a Doctor Strange exclusive planned. We're going to take a look at it right now. It's packaged a little bit like a set of Christmas ornaments. I mean, that's what this reminds me of. Disney, actually, in particular, does this kind of packaging for their different sets of Christmas ornaments out of Walt Disney World. And it is the Disney company, so I guess they were like, that's a good idea. Let's just go with that. But of course, it's also based on trying to incorporate the Book of Vishanti into this exclusive Comic-Con set, and that, of course, is the spell book that Doctor Strange uses. Now, not only is this a beautiful toy set, but I think it's very interesting the characters they've decided to show here and what it potentially might say about the movie. Now, of course, when you have a movie on the horizon, any move from the company, Marvel, in this case Marvel, be it in the comics or with merchandise, it's probably setting the stage for the movie because, it's corporate synergy at its best. They know they have to promote this. They know they have to prime the audience for this property, and so that's likely what you're seeing here. But again, interesting people or characters included in this set. So let's begin. Now, right there at the top left in his astral form is Doctor Strange. He, of course, looks like the comic book version. We have not seen how Benedict Cumberbatch will look in the role, but I think it's interesting that that's the version of him they included on the astral plane. There's been some discussion as to how magic-based this Doctor Strange version will be, but instead it might actually be based on different planes of reality and alternate universes. So that would be a very interesting change of focus for the Doctor Strange character. So I like having his astral form there. That's very cool. Then in the middle there you have the Eye of Agamotto, which of course is the thing that the Sorcerer Supreme wears, usually to clasp his cape around his neck. Doctor Strange has it, and of course he gives it to Brother Voodoo, who you see is the next figure there when he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. Now you might recall Chiwetel Ejiofor's name was mentioned a little bit with Doctor Strange for a while there, and perhaps that's because Brother Voodoo does appear in the film. Brother Voodoo is a very very interesting character. I liked it when he was Doctor Strange. It was very short-lived. I guess it didn't move as many comic books as Marvel had hoped, the publisher. But I do think it's an interesting character. He's popped up also recently on one of the Avengers teams, alongside Vision and Havoc and Wanda and Pietro. So that's another sign that perhaps he will appear in the film. But Brother Voodoo, great character, and an interesting character who very much, exists in his own right. He might have taken over the Sorcerer Supreme mantle, but at the same time, he comes from his own origin story. He's not just, a diversity card played on a popular character. So I think that's very encouraging. Now, what's really interesting here, next on the bottom left, you see Hela, who of course oversees the Asgardian version of Hell, Hell basically with one L, included in the set. She's a very cool character, and I'm very interested to see that she might potentially be in the Doctor Strange movie. I think that would be a very good development for the film. I like that she has that cool sword there you can see included, and then also points to perhaps her being a major character in Thor Ragnarok, that she might be introduced there. And I have to say, there's no ancient one in this toy package, and that's who Tilda Swinton's supposed to be playing, but I think she would make one heck of a Hela. I think she would be fantastic in that role, and it's a little bit of a shame when you think that she might be going for the ancient one instead of a role that is basically like the demonic version of the Ice Queen she played so well in the Narnia movies. So anyway, in the middle there you have a Doctor Strange villain, Dormammu. He comes with some little hand flares there. I like with toys you see the little accessories and what clips-on wear. But that's a villain there, so that points to the fact that he might be the villain in the movie. And then interestingly, Magic is included in this set. Now, I don't know if she can be included in a Doctor Strange movie because she's an X-Men character, and specifically, Fox is moving forward with a New Mutants movie, sorry. It was considered maybe for a television show for some time. It's actually going to be a movie. We talked about that recently. Magic, of course, I think is one of the most popular New Mutant characters of all time. She's Colossus's younger sister. Very interesting backstory. And in the comics, she's been training with Doctor Strange, I believe, out of the timeline. Either traveling forwards or backwards to maybe potentially be the Sorcerer Supreme in the future. We saw an alternate timeline where Eva went to the future and Magic was the Sorcerer Supreme. So she's really become looped into this whole subset of Marvel, the way they divide up the characters. I've liked that development, so I'm glad to see her included in the set. I also like her current costume being included here. I think it's really awesome, but I don't see how she could possibly be in the movie when I expect Fox to want to utilize her in that New Mutants film. However, she isn't a founding member of the New Mutants, and then also they've said they want to go with like a low-budget kind of horror feel for that film. It was later discussed. So perhaps they won't use magic, and maybe, as they did with Wanda and Pietro, Marvel Comics is not above tinkering with the history of a character to make it no longer under Fox's contract, right? So we'll see. I think Magic, of course, is a very popular character, and will be a real benefit to the Doctor Strange movie. But I think this is a very good grouping of characters. I think it makes the magic aspects of Marvel look really good. Interestingly, Scarlet Witch is not included here. I guess perhaps that would have been maybe a better choice if you want to tie in more with the films. A lot of us, including myself, have speculated she will be in the Doctor Strange movie, but we will see. But I think it's a beautiful little set for Comic-Con, and I'm curious, is this something you would want to pick up? Do you think it plays it all into the movie, or do you think it's just for Comic-Con? And then also, just what do you think of the lack of overall attention for the Doctor Strange movie, even though it's so close to being released? Alright, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is about Assassin's Creed. This is the Michael Fassbender movie that's coming up. He's producing it as well as starring. It's going to co-star Marion Cotillard. Perhaps Alicia Vikander will also be in the film, and it has the same director as the upcoming Macbeth Michael Fassbender film, which is one of the reasons. So it's actually something people are talking about Assassin's Creed a lot right now, because every time everyone looks at the just recently released trailer, they're like, "Oh, this is the same creative team for Assassin's Creed, the movie." So we have this poster that came out. It's from the publisher of the games, the developer of the games, Ubisoft. As you can see, Ubisoft is very aggressively getting into the movie space. But I think it's a really interesting choice for the poster. And when I saw it at first, I was like, why a hawk? It's Assassin's Creed. I know that it's like a group of assassins throughout time, and each entry has a different like historical era that it takes place in. And that's the extent of my familiarity with Assassin's Creed. But of course, it's a very popular video game. And obviously Hollywood is hoping to tap into that fan base to go buy tickets to see this movie. But I think a hawk is a very interesting choice. So I looked it up and I was like, why would they use a hawk? And the speculation is that it's because Fassbender might be playing the character of Jonathan Hawk, which is one of these descendants of this line of assassins. So that might be the main central character. But it also, in the coverage and the speculation about this movie, it talks to the fact that Michael Fassbender might be playing all of his descendants, from different nationalities, from different countries throughout time, which I can see would be a very attractive prospect for Michael Fassbender from an actor's perspective. But I think I'll be very curious to see how audiences react to Michael Fassbender playing different nationalities, from all over the globe, not just one region, considering a lot of the discussion people have today about whitewashing roles. For instance, Aloha really blew up in Cameron Crowe's face. He had to publicly apologize for casting Emma Stone as someone who was half Asian. And so I wonder if Michael Fassbender can get away with, playing someone who's Egyptian, someone who's Spanish, in the name of, oh, well, we're all from the same descendant, right? So that's that'll be a very interesting thing indeed. But I'm just curious to what you guys think of this choice for publicizing the film. I'm sure that, people who play the game are excited to see a hawk, or are you? I'm very curious to know how Assassin's Creed fans feel when they see this poster. Are you like, oh yeah, it's on? Or are you like, I'm equally not impressed? But I can tell you from a non-video game perspective, someone who doesn't play the game, I think that this makes this seem not as exciting as it should be. I mean, I've always thought that the posters for Assassin's Creed really captured my attention. I've always enjoyed the different historical perspectives. I like how the Assassin's Creed uniform is, tinkered with to mirror the time that it takes place in. I think that's always very cool. So I think to go with a hawk, I think is a really interesting choice. So it's going to be a balancing act for the publicity teams, for the studios who are releasing these films, to appeal to both the video game fans and the non-video game fans, to make sure everybody goes to see the movie. Comic books are a little easier because you have characters in cool uniforms with powers, you just show them off, right? Although you have characters with cool costumes here, and the movie is choosing not to show them off. So again, I'm curious to hear from both fans of Assassin's Creed and non-fans. What do you think of this first official image for the movie? And why is it Michael Fassbender's face on it, right? He's like the biggest selling point for it. All right, now the third story of the day has to do with Independence Day 2. And over the weekend, we got the synopsis, the first official synopsis for the film, and just a basic discussion about what's going to happen overall. Now, when Independence Day first came out, not a lot of comic book type movies out there, and so, it was a lot less of a competitive marketplace. But Independence Day 2 is, of course, entering a much more crowded marketplace, and it's interesting to see how Roland Emmerich is trying to distinguish it. So basically, the aliens come back and they attack us again, right? So that's like the very simplistic setup of the movie. And they also discuss the idea of wormholes, that for the aliens, they're still fighting the same battle, it's just been a few weeks later, but because of wormholes, like 20 years have passed for humanity, right? But this is where things get interesting. Roland Emmerich has said that the alien technology that's left behind by the aliens, while humans aren't able to advance it any further than what they get, they're able to use what's given to them and incorporate it into different parts of Earth's society and also weapons. So that's a serious bit of world building for Roland Emmerich to take on. Not really someone who's well known for world building. I think Roland Emmerich, of course, is known for disaster films and also a very good ability to weave different storylines together. Just like you have in all kind of disaster movies, you have different characters and they allow you to cover the scope of an event, right? You're like, well, they're across the globe, so we'll jump from character to character to see what's going on in different places during this catastrophe. That's always worked very well for Roland Emmerich, and I think it could potentially work here if he shows subtly how alien technology has affected each of these different storylines, right? So they're saying that alien technology is being used from everything for a defense system to protect the planet that all the governments of the world have worked together to create, and they're also being used just on everyday transportation, like hover technology on airplanes, for instance. So I think that this is an interesting way to go, and I think that if they have like a human strike force team of soldiers, maybe that's a global force team, considering all the governments of the world are working together, they could create kind of like a human version of the Avengers where no one, it's almost like S.H.I.E.L.D. I guess that's when you think about it, it's almost like Independence Day 2 will be like S.H.I.E.L.D. minus the superheroes, and just do it from that perspective. And I think that we get more comic book movies in the same space. I think it's getting harder and harder to distinguish them, right? And when you have other companies and brands borrowing or cherry-picking from your mythology, in this case the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think it makes it tougher for the MCU. And they, of course, can't copyright protect advanced technology used to protect the Earth. So I think it's just, we get more and more people covering the same kind of story, it's harder and harder to differentiate the story. So I'm curious, does this sound good to you? Do you think Roland Emmerich can pull something like this off? And I still feel that if Roland Emmerich, his trump card here will be having, he's talked about wanting to do this, a gay character in the film that just happens to be gay, isn't there for comedic effect, isn't there for tokenism, is a hero that works to save the day, but happens to be gay. Roland Emmerich himself is gay, and I think that that would, if he's able to implement that, if the studio gives him the green light to do that as for a character, I think that more than anything else will help Independence Day to stand out from the crowd. But right now, I'm curious to how the film sounds to you. What do you think of this idea of using alien technology into the way we do everyday things on Earth? And do you think Independence Day 2 can compete with all the comic book movies and video game movies out there? All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now, I have a viewer question from Patrick Kelly, which I thought was very interesting. And Patrick says, Grace, I've got a question and I hope you answer it. With remakes like Scarface, Ocean's 11, and Evil Dead, just to name 3, finding success, I think he means the original, the Al Pacino's Scarface was a remake of another Scarface film. So he's not talking about the upcoming remake of Scarface. So anyway, he continues saying, finding success when compared to the originals, but Psycho, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Death at a Funeral not doing so well. Is it a good idea for studios to greenlight remakes? Is it too much of a risk, even if they do make money at times? Scarface is getting another remake. Then there's also The Magnificent Seven, which Patrick says he feels are both good ideas. But then they were doing Strangers on a Train, and then which were receiving a remake because the story's altered very much so. And Patrick says he does love David Fincher. For those of you who didn't hear, Strangers on a Train is being remade in the light of campaigning for the award season for a movie star. And it's not going to be on a plane, it's going to be on a train, it's going to be on a private plane. So Patrick continues saying, I don't mind remakes because the original still exists, but are they a good idea? Personally, I would love to see remakes of Wait Until Dark and even Rear Window, one of my all-time favorite films, which was sort of remade with Disturbia. It's one of my favorite films as well. But could it ever happen? Thanks for taking the time to read this. Keep all the great work I watch every day and enjoy your perspective on film. Well, I always invite the opportunity to talk about remakes. I think that it's a real hot-button issue, and I think it speaks to an overall problem with, I think, the poor way that older films are packaged and presented to the public, right? Older films are really, really good, obviously. I mean, they're classics for a reason. And I really think that everybody owes it to themselves to go and watch the classics. And I know some people don't like subtitles, and I know some people don't like black and white film, but you're really missing out on some great stories if you adhere to those guidelines for when deciding what to watch. I have a problem with remakes overall because I think it keeps people from watching the original. While the original still exists, people go, well, I should just watch the newer one with the actor that I'm familiar with. Also, if the new one doesn't do well, sometimes it can cast a pall on the original, where it hurts the title recognition, where someone could go, oh, I could watch the old one, but oh, you know what? I don't like the new one, and so why should I check out the original? So the only time that I'm a fan of a remake is if they can significantly change the story. For instance, Scarface focuses on a criminal immigrant who rises to the top of the criminal underworld from a different region of the world. So I think that's a really good idea, right? I think The Magnificent Seven was a good remake of The Seven Samurai because it took a an Eastern samurai film and made it into a Western. So I think that was very clever. So I'm all for, you know, doing a twist on something, but I think a shot-for-shot remake by like Psycho is ridiculous. And I think that Strangers on a Train, I don't see any reason to remake that. I think that I think that it seems somewhat interesting when you consider you know, changing it to a plane and putting it in award season, but that just seems like change for the sake of change. I'm talking about something that speaks to the way, I guess what I mean is change is fine, and you can do a remake when society has changed so much that the original film is no longer quite as applicable to today's culture as it once was, right? So you want to reflect the changing world, and in the change of the film, in the remake, you kind of comment on that. So I'm all for also changes in terms of ethnicity and gender and casting. I think that could always be very interesting. And so I'm a fan in that regard. For instance, Ghostbusters. Redoing Ghostbusters with some female Ghostbusters is a good idea. But again, I don't see any reason to redo that. Just have a new entry and the Ghostbusters just continue on. So that would be fine. But I'm just against remaking films because I think it keeps people from seeing the originals, except in the context that I outlined. But I'm curious how everybody else feels. What do you think of remakes? You know, why don't you like, for those of you who aren't into watching older films, why not? Is it the black and white aspect? Is it the, you know, subtitles for foreign films? Because that's also a pet peeve of mine, that there are these great foreign movies that we don't get to see here in America because, you know, they're kept from getting a really good release, and then they're just remade by the Hollywood studios, who kind of hold back those movies so they can make a release and make money off of it themselves. So it's a very self-interested blocking of a movie that otherwise we would get to explore. So thank you very much for your question, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.